Welcome back, everyone. I'm always fascinated by new research, and this deep dive is no exception. We're taking a look at how to optimize manual software testing. You sent over this paper with insights from 38 real-world practitioners, and it's got me thinking, is manual testing really as outdated as some people think?
It's a great question. And honestly, going into this research, I had some of the same preconceptions.
Hmm,
But it's really interesting to see how manual testing is actually thriving. Did you know that over 90% of companies still rely on it in some form?
90%.
No.
Wow. Okay, so it's clearly not going anywhere. But I'm curious, why is that? Is it just a matter of budget constraints? Or are there other reasons why companies are sticking with manual testing?
Budget definitely plays a role for some, but this research highlights something super important. Manual testing offers this unique flexibility and adaptability that's really hard to beat. Like, think about those subtle user experience issues, or, when you're working with rapidly changing software.
Right, automation might miss those nuances.
Exactly. Let's say you're developing a mobile banking app where security and user friendliness are absolutely crucial. A purely automated approach might struggle, to evaluate those subtle things in the user flow or even catch security loopholes that a human tester could spot instantly.
Okay, that makes total sense. It's like manual testers bring that human intuition and critical thinking to the table. But, everyone's talking about automation. This research actually digs into some of the challenges with automation, right? It's not always the silver bullet, is it?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. There's this whole allure of set it and forget it. But the reality is, it's just not that simple.
The research mentions resource constraints.
Hmm.
Obviously, things like budget, time, and expertise can be major hurdles. But what about those companies that do have those resources? What are they struggling with when it comes to automation?
Oh, they definitely hit their own roadblocks.
Hmm.
One participant talked about trying to automate testing on a legacy system, and it turns out the data structure was just a nightmare. Super complex, poorly documented.
Oh,
Yeah. Creating automated tests for it was just this massive headache, and actually got to the point where they had to abandon the entire project.
so even with the resources, the technical complexity could just be a deal breaker.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole issue of constantly evolving software and interfaces.
Right.
Keeping those automated tests up to date, that can be a whole other beast.
It sounds like manual testing is more than just like a backup plan. It's a vital part of the software development lifecycle,
Yeah.
even in our, increasingly tech-driven world. I'm curious, what types of manual testing are companies actually using these days? I mean, what does it actually look like in practice?
Well, you've got your classic regression testing. That's all about making sure new changes don't break existing functionality. Like imagine you're renovating your kitchen and you accidentally cut off the electricity to the whole house.
Not the best outcome.
Right. Regression testing is like preventing those kinds of disasters in the software world.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So what else is there?
Well, then you have acceptance testing. This is where testers kind of step into the shoes of the end user, making sure the software actually meets those requirements and behaves the way it's supposed to. Sometimes developers can get really deep into the code, and they might miss how a real person would actually use the system.
So acceptance testing is all about making sure the software actually does what it's supposed to do from the user's perspective.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What about exploratory testing? It seems a bit more, free form.
It is. That's where the tester's experience and intuition really come into play. It's about, creatively probing the system, trying to uncover those hidden issues that might not be caught by more structured tests. It's like being a detective looking for clues.
It sounds like exploratory testing requires a unique set of skills. It's fascinating, though. This research found some companies managing tens of thousands of manual test cases. How do they even keep track of all of that?
That's a great question. And it leads us perfectly into this whole concept of optimization, which is really at the heart of this deep dive. This research highlights some really clever techniques that can make manual testing way more efficient, even when you're dealing with these massive test suites.
Okay, now this is what I'm talking about.
Mm.
So you're telling me there are ways to make manual testing better without having to become a coding whiz. Tell me more.
Oh yeah, there are definitely some tricks of the trade. One that really stood out is reusing test steps, kind of like building with Legos.
I like that analogy.
You create these steps once, like logging in or setting up certain data, and then boom, you can reuse them over and over again in different tests. Saves so much time.
Right, and probably cuts down on errors, too.
Exactly. No more reinventing the wheel every time. And then there's this thing called test case selection. Think of it like you're a chef making this really elaborate dish.
Okay, I'm following you.
You wouldn't use every single ingredient in your pantry, right? You pick and choose the ones that, bring the most flavor and really get you to that perfect final product.
So test case selection is kind of like that. You're choosing the most relevant tests based on things like maybe recent code changes or those areas that have historically been bug magnets.
Precisely. It's about being strategic with your testing efforts.
Hmm.
And then you've got test case prioritization, which I always think of as kind of like triage in a hospital.
Makes sense. Deal with the most urgent cases first.
Exactly. You want to address those critical patients right away, right? Same idea here. Prioritize the tests that cover those really crucial functions, the stuff that absolutely cannot break, or those areas where historically there have been a lot of bugs.
So you can catch those showstoppers early on. I like it.
It's all about getting that feedback to the developers as quickly as possible so they can address the issues before they have a chance to impact, real users. And lastly, we have test case reduction. This one's all about decluttering your test suite, like spring cleaning for your software. Get rid of those tests that are redundant or, maybe they're just not relevant anymore. It's like cleaning out your closet.
Oh, I love a good closet clean out. So you're saying get rid of the tests that are just taking up space and not really adding any value.
That's the idea. It helps streamline the whole testing process, right? Nobody wants
Ah,
to waste time running tests that aren't telling them anything useful.
but how do you know which tests to toss?
That's where analysis and collaboration come in. Testers can team up with the developers, look at those code changes, and figure out which tests are just not necessary anymore. It's an ongoing process.
So it sounds like even small improvements in these areas could have a pretty big impact on efficiency and how many bugs you catch.
Oh, absolutely. And the best part is this is all about working smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to be a coding genius to make a real difference. And actually, the research goes even further, diving into some real-world examples. They looked at two companies. The first one was Munich Re, which is a huge player in finance and insurance.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
They were dealing with this massive number of manual acceptance tests for their business information system.
I bet. Systems like that can be so complex.
Totally.
Yeah.
And what they did was really smart. They decided to focus on reusing those test cases and test steps. By analyzing which parts of the code were actually changing, they could adapt those existing tests instead of starting from scratch every time.
So they found a way to leverage their previous work, saving tons of time and effort. But did it actually work?
Oh, it totally did. They not only found more bugs, but also significantly cut down on the time it took to run all those tests.
Okay, so that's a win-win. What about the second company?
The second one was IVU Traffic Technologies. They developed software for public transportation systems. And they were struggling with their regression testing process, specifically getting feedback quickly enough.
Right, because with something like public transportation, delays can have this huge ripple effect, right?
Exactly. Every minute counts. So what they did was they implemented this test case prioritization strategy. They started running the tests that, in the past, had found the most bugs first.
Smart move. Catch the big ones first.
Exactly. And by doing that, they got that crucial feedback way faster. The developers could jump on those issues right away and prevent them from, impacting those commuters out there in the real world.
So it's really cool to see these companies making these tangible improvements by applying these optimization techniques. It just goes to show, manual testing, it's not some outdated relic of the past.
No, not at all.
It's still so relevant, and there's so much potential for innovation.
Absolutely. It's a constantly evolving field. And, something this research really made me think about was we've talked about all these advancements, but what if we could find ways to, actually optimize exploratory testing as well? Could we somehow combine that creativity and intuition that human testers bring with, say, the power of AI?
Whoa, now that's an interesting thought, like having an AI-powered assistant working alongside the testers, helping them, figure out the most promising areas to explore based on all that past testing data.
Exactly. Imagine these AI tools that can analyze user behavior, pinpoint those potential usability issues, or maybe even suggest scenarios that might trigger those really hidden bugs.
That would be amazing. It's like AI wouldn't be replacing human testers. It would be enhancing their skills and expertise.
It's all about finding that right balance, between human ingenuity and these amazing technological advancements. And what's really cool is that this deep dive has really highlighted how manual testing, it's this living, breathing field, and there's so much excitement about the future.
Oh, for sure. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for our listeners is that, manual testing, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. It's absolutely critical to software development. And by using these optimization techniques, we can make it even more efficient, more effective, and honestly, more fun.
Totally agree.
It really is. It's like we've unearthed this, treasure chest of techniques and strategies. And honestly, I think anyone involved in manual testing, they can benefit from this.
Definitely. And it's not just about like rotely following a set of rules, it's about embracing this mindset of continuous improvement, always looking for ways to refine your process, and really just elevate the craft of testing.
I love that. Approaching manual testing with this sense of curiosity, being creative, and really having that passion for delivering high-quality software.
Yes, exactly. And this research, I think it really empowers testers to take ownership of their work,
Mhm.
to experiment, to share what they've learned, and to become those true champions for quality.
This whole deep dive has honestly been a real eye-opener for me. I had no idea there was so much to manual testing optimization, all these layers. And it's clear that, it's not just about clicking buttons. It's about using your skills, using your experience and your judgment to make sure that software, meets the highest possible standards.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And remember, with optimization, the journey never really ends. There's always something new to learn, always a new challenge waiting around the corner, and always a new opportunity to make a real difference.
So true. So to all you testers out there, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep pushing those boundaries. Who knows what amazing things you'll discover.
Happy testing, everyone.
And remember, this is the deep dive, your shortcut to being well informed. We'll see you next time.